Good afternoon. I'm Cal Gould, and we're here to do an interview with a close friend and longtime player. And you've been more than just a player over the years, but can you tell me your name and where you're from?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, hi, Gal. Doug McCarthy. Born and raised in Edmonton. Played all my ball hockey. In the Edmonton area there, and started, I guess, in 1979, 1980.
So, what are some of your early memories of playing unorganized ball hockey and street hockey? What do you have from memories from before playing organized ball hockey?
Well, like everybody in Canada, we played for hours and hours on the streets, in a parking lot. I was fortunate enough, to live in an area where there wasn't a lot of traffic, so we had street hockey right in front of our house in Kensington, and it was 3-4 hours a night playing hockey out on the road. If we weren't playing football or weren't playing tennis, we were playing hockey with the neighborhood kids, and it was a great childhood. And it was when I found that there was ball hockey to continue, it just seemed like a natural thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's where most people learn to play. Was on the street. Did you play other organized sports before you became involved in ball hockey?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Growing up, I played all the sports that there were. I played lacrosse, hockey, soccer, played football. I actually, lost my interest in hockey a little bit during my high school football years. So it kind of stagnated some of my hockey. And then, played tennis, played volleyball, basketball in junior high. Almost every sport there was, we were out there doing it. So that was the nice thing about living in a community where there were great parents that were always willing to coach the kids into organized teams, and we always had opportunities to play every night. There's always something going on.
How did you join the ball hockey league that you first played in? And by that, what I mean is, did you join with friends, or did you get invited by somebody, or did you answer a newspaper ad?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. We were playing outdoor. We were playing at a rink in North Glenora. And it was just me and my buddies. I think this is probably about 1980 or 81, maybe. And we were just outdoor, and then some team shows up to have a practice. And it was Henry Federici's team. So they were coming to have a practice, and they asked us to kick us off the rink because they'd rented the rink. And we said, well, no, this isn't a rink you can rent. This is a community rink. Anyways, we ended up playing them. So they had their team there, and they had, let's say 10, 12 guys on their team. And we had about 5 or 6 of us. My buddy Mike Slade in net with his baseball glove and no mask or anything. And we actually beat him quite handily. And so Henry asked a couple of us to come out and play for his team. So my first game was in Westmount with Henry Federici as the coach. And I played a couple shifts. I was just like an extra there. So I played a couple shifts, and then that was really it. He didn't really ask me back. So the next summer, one of my best friends for life, Dino Machete, was playing ball hockey. He said, Doug, why don't you come out and play on our ball hockey team? And so sure enough, and I joined the Edmonton Playboys. So I believe that was 81 or 82, and joined the Edmonton Playboys and really developed my lifelong friendships from that group of guys. It was a real core of guys that stuck together for 20 years. And even today, Malcolm Stinson and myself and Dino and Damon Haybear, we're all still very, very close, and we see each other, regularly.
So how old were you when you first started playing? Were you with players that are about the same age? It sounds like they were all around your age.
Yeah, I was right around 19, 20 years old. We're all about the same. I think Malcolm was the elder statesman. He might have been 22 years old or something when I joined the team. He had been playing for a couple of years already. But we were all guys that were in our early 20s, and then stuck together for 20 years, right up till we're 40 years old.
What was that name of the first team that you played with Henry Federici? Do you have any recall?
I don't remember. I just remember he said we have a game in Westmount if you wanted to come out, and I showed up whenever that next game was and played a couple shifts, not much, and then that was really it.
Well, I'll be talking with Henry Federici, and I'm sure he'll remember pretty well.
Yeah,
he's a pretty sharp guy. He remembers a lot of things.
Yeah.
What were any other teams that you were involved with? Obviously, the Playboys for a long period of time.
Yeah. So I played with Playboys. I was often picked up by the Nordiques in the early 80s, mid 80s. The Nordiques were the the strongest team in Alberta, and they kind of went to nationals every year. So, they invariably would beat us in the final or the semifinal of provincials, and then they would pick up a few of us and we'd go to nationals with them. So Playboys was my main team, played for the Nordiques at nationals a number of times. And then we moved on to the Snipers in 2000. Malcolm, Dino, and myself, we all joined the Edmonton Snipers as the Playboys were getting a little long in the tooth. And we played with the Snipers for about 10 years. And then in my 50s and that, I played for a few other teams. There was the Rock we played for, and the Jets. And then now we're back playing for the Snipers in a very low division team. So it's a lot of fun.
All right. So going back to when you said you played other organized sports, what was your impression of the organization of ball hockey, or that however you were involved, whether as a player or any other capacity? How would you see ball hockey and organizations in comparison to some other organized sports you played?
So back in the early 80s, there was a lot more pickup sports that you could play. And by that means you could run down to the playground and pick up a baseball game or a softball game. But with ball hockey is the first time that I kind of started, recognizing that there's leagues and there's guys who are putting in a lot of volunteer time to organize it, so that there were there were timekeepers, there were stats, there were playoffs, there were opportunities to move on to, city, provincial, and national championships. And that's what ball hockey, I think, really, from an Edmonton perspective, that was really invigorating for those people that were fortunate enough to have that passion, because we had that full group of people very early that, hey, you showed up at a game and there's two refs. And if you do something untoward, and I wasn't the cleanest of players, you were suspended or maybe even fined. And it was pretty impressive to see that kind of organization pre-internet. You'd go to the rink and the stats are up on the boards. There was hockey, like a little pamphlet that went out, I think maybe once a month, just some write-ups of the teams and the different divisions. And that, for me, just, you knew that there were some very committed and organized people driving that. I mean, you were one of them. I mean, you were one of the early stewards of the game and helped build it. I think we had 200 or 300 teams there a few years ago in the Edmonton area. So just hats off to all those guys who just put in all that time to make it seem as professional as it could be for a bunch of guys in their 20s that were working and then having something to do at night that was very organized and very professionally run.
I like the comparison to the pickup sports that you had, because I think pretty well, anybody that had any kind of athletic inclination would go play sport, whether it's soccer or flag football or whatever down the street. And so you're right. I agree with you on the ball hockey organization. It really brought people together in a community. Were you involved in sport in any other way? Were you a coach or manager or a ref? Or I don't recall you being a ref, but were you a coach or manager?
No, I didn't. I didn't get involved in coaching ball hockey until I started playing for the national team, and then was approached. I was captain a couple of times, and then approached to, were you interested in coaching? And so I put my name in the hat for the Masters team, and I coached them in Bermuda, and then was going to coach them in Czechoslovakia over the last couple of years, but because of COVID got delayed. And then this year we were going to go to Czechoslovakia, and I was the head coach, and I had too many pressures at home and at work that I couldn't commit my time properly to the guys so they could be successful. But in ball hockey, I've really just been a player, other than at the national level where I've tried to coach.
There are multiple levels of play in the league. You've already told us how you played in different levels or different tournaments. But the Masters, just to clarify, that is classified as individuals after a certain age. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, the Masters Team Canada is typically for players over 40 or over, but you're allowed to have a number of players between 36 and 40 and 36 and 39.
Okay, so not counting the Masters, what was your highest level play that you ever had to play in? What is the highest level or the greatest competition?
Well, I mean, I played hockey over in Europe, in the professional leagues. I played professional roller hockey, which, we were playing in front of 8,000 fans a game in the summer, especially in the California area. And that was, a high level. And then I played with the Golden Bears ice hockey team. So from a sports, I did play some fairly good ice hockey and roller hockey. But for ball hockey, the competition at the nationals level is as high a standard of sport that I've seen. And those people that are champions at that level are a committed group with incredible physical fitness and practice and systems and organized coaching that it's if you were to say to me what's the toughest tournament I've ever played in, well, I could tell you going to nationals in the mid-90s was as tough a tournament to play as I've ever seen, just because of the amount of teams and the fact that Alberta wasn't necessarily one of the strongest teams, but we went there and always did very, very well because of some of our commitment.
Right. So that actually led to my next question about the provincial, regional, and national tournaments. They've been held in different provinces and what have you. And I was about to ask that. When was your biggest national tournament? Do you recall which is the biggest national tournament you ever played in?
Well, there were some in the 80s, and I know Calgary always hosted well, Edmonton always hosted well, but we did a tournament in Moncton, New Brunswick. I believe it was, I want to say 84, 85. We took the bronze. I was with Nordiques, picked up Dino, myself, James McKay, a couple guys from the Playboys. And back then, Alberta was only allowed 3 pickups. We didn't find out you could have multiple pickups. But that tournament, that was one of the tournaments where there were 10 provinces all represented, other than maybe Saskatchewan. The Maritime provinces were all strong because they were hosting. And it just seemed to me like the banquet and everything was a phenomenal tournament. We did go to some other tournaments. Anytime Newfoundland hosted, it was phenomenal. Newfoundland, you go to St. John's, it's just, I've been there, let's say 3 or 4 times. And it's just a fantastic tournament, pack stands, TV, front page of the newspaper, everything else. And it was a superbly run tournament. And it's a lot of fun.
So what would you call then your favorite memory of ball hockey or favorite memories? Is there a certain favorite memory you have that stands out? It doesn't have to be something that was a high level competition. It could just be something you went through.
For me, the biggest thing for ball hockey for me was spending the time with some of my closest friends, Malcolm Stinson especially, the Musey brothers, Damon Hebert, and just going out there. Guys are working, in your 20s, you might be drywalling, you might be doing construction work. And then you're showing up at the rink at 7:30 and you're putting every ounce of energy into what you can. And you might be playing against better athletes, bigger, stronger guys, college players, but your group of drywallers and laborers were just competing with and then just sitting in the dressing room after and have a couple beers or going up, once the soccer centers came in and going up and watching other ball hockey games after with your best friends. That to me was the epitome of what ball hockey brought to my life. And I partially met my wife through ball hockey. She was a ball hockey player too. And my sister played, which, and you were friends with my sister at a time. The interaction with those close friends is the thing that is most dear to me about ball hockey.
Well, that was actually my next question. So other family members that you had played ball hockey was on my list here. So you indicated your sister, of course, and I'm familiar with that. But how did she get involved? Like exactly? Do you remember?
Well, I think Colleen was playing ice hockey. Colleen was a figure skater growing up. And then my aunt got her into ice hockey. And she was playing ice hockey out in Duffield, I remember, on a Thursday night. My mom and I went out there one night. But anyway, so then Colleen was I think some of the girls on that team, Colleen was a runner, so she was always in a very good physical condition. So they got her to come out to ball hockey, and then she played, maybe 10 years, with some close friends. And I think you may have coached them one year.
Yeah, the first year, yeah.
And then I always remember the tournament we had. People always see, they see this these 3-on-3 tournaments, and I always laugh. I said, little do these guys know, but the very first 3-on-3 ball hockey tournament run in Alberta, as far as I know, was the one that I ran. And you, me, my sister, and Deb, I can't remember Deb's last name. We ended up we just about beat Malcolm's team. So I think we took 4th or something. It was it was awesome.
Yeah, I recall that weekend because I played before that tournament, we had played your team in Tipton and Big Mitch. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
He fell on me.
Oh, yeah.
And he landed on my chest, and it absolutely crushed me because I was going down to, kind of like golf shot the ball, and I got tangled up together with him, and his whole weight landed on my chest, and I was really injured. And then you said, we got to play this tournament. And so I played it with his bruised ribs. Later on, I found out I had a partially collapsed lung on one side.
Oh my God.
I didn't discover it. I always had this cough, and I couldn't, always blamed it on my allergies. And then I'd gone in for some, I have some scarring down there, but it's the reason why on one side I have a little bit of a cough. I mean, I could obviously handle my breathing okay. I can still play sports, but didn't know that it was partially crushed and it was from an injury. And he said, were you in any kind of car accident? I go, no, but I had a 6'5", 280-pound, 240-pound guy land on my chest.
And I guarantee you, Mitch seen you down there, and he didn't stop. He tried to make it as painful as possible.
He couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop his momentum. He just he did want to crush me, but he didn't mean to hit me on the chest. And then on that same play, our defenseman gets high sticked and had to go to the hospital. So we had to finish the game with only 9 players, but we still beat you guys, unfortunately. But wow. For you, but what I do remember with the 3-on-3 tournament, very, very carefully. I remember we played half the rink. Am I correct in that?
A third of the rink. We put
a third of the rink. Yeah.
Yeah. Mitch actually was working for Lafarge. So for the boards, we had curb forms, and we put them on the blue line and the blue line. So there was a game going on in the middle, and then 2 games going on the outsides.
Right. And it was continuous play. There was no whistle after the goal, that sort of thing. Yeah. That was a very, very demanding physically. I mean, you could not take a breather. You didn't have any line changes. You had one shift or one change. I recall you played the whole game, and the girls switched out from time to time, and I went in net. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. That was not the smartest thing to do.
I think it was about 35 degrees out doing that old tip.
Yeah,
so it was awesome.
I lost 10 pounds, but the slap shots from Malcolm. What happened was I couldn't find the goaltender's glove in the dressing room, so I had to use a baseball glove. Of course, you have no protection here.
Yeah.
And whenever he would take a slap shot and come like this, I would make the save and it would hit me on the wrist. And I remember at the end of the game, like 3 times, I would try to make a glove save and I would got hit in the wrist instead of the hand. And my hand was just like as numb as could be. But I was like going, man, I never ever considered Malcolm's shot to be powerful. But after that, I said, okay, Malcolm's got a powerful shot.
Oh, he shot the ball. I mean, you don't score 100 points year after year after year and not be able to shoot the ball hard.
I looked at him, because he doesn't seem like when he takes a slap shot that he puts a lot of energy into it. But somehow with his banana curve stick, he would just get off an incredible amount of power. I was quite remarkable at that. So are you still involved in ball hockey in any way? And if so, how long do you plan to be involved?
Yeah, so I was heavily involved with Team Canada. I guess let's call it from 2014 till I guess in August. And then in August, I resigned from Team Canada for the Masters program just because I couldn't put the time in to commit to the guys so that they had the best coaching that they could. And the tournament came in September, and we got another. I talked to Francois, who runs the team, and we made some changes in that. But I do plan on getting back involved. I'm probably need to wait for a year or two of, my current construction company just picked up a big contract, and it's going to take all of my efforts to make sure that it's managed properly.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to play ball hockey?
You know what? go down to the rink and find the people sitting at the chairs. There's Guy Lunnon, and I think he's still involved, and just tell them you want to play, and they'll find a team for you to play on. There's all kinds of leagues opening up as well. So there's other guys like, and I can't remember Davison's first name, but he's running a league. And, you know, there's pickup ball hockey now that they're playing 3-on-3 at Westmount. So there's about 4 or 5 different leagues. It's not all consolidated like it was, you know, 15, 20 years ago, but it's, there's lots of ball hockey, but just go down to the soccer centers. There'll be a game coming on, you know, at some point in the evening, and just talk to the people, and they'll get you on the game, or look it up. I mean, nowadays, go on the internet and go Edmonton ball hockey, and there'll be tons of ways to find people that need players, specifically goalies. They're always asking for goalies, and you can certainly find your way onto a ball hockey team.
Is there a person, if they were here right now, that you would want to thank for getting you involved in ball hockey? Is there a person you can think of?
Well, Dino Machete. So Dino Machete and I grew up together. I met Dino when I was 5 in grade 1. We were in the same class for 8 years in a row, best friends growing up, you know, as close as brothers can be, I guess, you know, when you're young like that. And then, you know, Dino and I, as we got into our teenage or late teens, little different circles. And, but he called me and said, hey, why don't you come out and play ball hockey? And he got me on the Playboys, and I could never thank Dino enough for, you know, bringing that kind of enjoyment to my life.
That's great. And that was obviously quite a few years ago. What do you see or hope to see for the future of ball hockey?
I think just continued growth. You know, the IIHF now, you know, the ball hockey that's played in Czechoslovakia, in Slovakia, in USA, in the States, that's as organized and has strong a commitment to the sport as anywhere. And I'm hoping that Ball Hockey Canada can continue their great work, because they're trying to professionalize it a lot. What I'm hoping happens is that there's some funding. One of the things with the national teams, and especially the kids, so you're looking at under 16s, under 18s, under 20s, they're traveling all over the world. But typically, it's all paid for by the parents or by the player. There's not that, you know, if a guy, you know, I look at the Masters team, it probably cost each player $3,000 to go play. Now, it's a chance of a lifetime, and it's worth every penny. But there are some guys that cost is you know, stops them from really making it what it could be. I'm just with the amount of sport, you know, that's out there. Sorry, if the amount of opportunities to support sport, there's got to be some big name companies that could help support Team Canada and put some money behind it, so the cost to the players isn't what it is right now. I know that there are other countries where those organizations are paying, you know, I look at the States, similar. Their program, they have 2 full-time coaches running around scouting guys all the time. So that's USA Hockey. They've committed to ball hockey. You know, I know Hockey Canada is in a bit of a turmoil right now, but, you know, maybe there's some opportunities to do some sharing and some mentorship, so that ball hockey can get some of that funding that's available. And it doesn't need much. You know, you don't have the big cost you do for other sport.
That's true. Yeah, the cost is certainly lower, and I think that's what brought a lot of players to the sport. It was lower of a cost to play a season than it was to play, for instance, ice hockey.
Sure.
Yeah, so sponsorship is obviously an avenue that has to occur at some point or another, whether it's a major sponsor or some sort of sponsorship from even possibly you know, government funding that would help, that sort of thing. I agree on amateur sports, but what I was getting at was for the future of ball hockey. Right now, the world's championships are the highest level of competition. Did you know that there was discussion a number of years ago? And in fact, I've heard it whispered, and we whispered it years ago, that I know that the CBHA and international organization, ISBHF, have tried to approach the International Olympic Committee
Yeah.
And I think that would be the next obvious step. And it would be, I'm going to put it to you that way, I think it would be the ultimate. And if it were to come to a point that ball hockey ever made it to an Olympic level, how would you like to be involved if there was a chance? Let's just suppose. Let's just dream here.
Be the stick boy. I mean, obviously, if it got the opportunity to go to an Olympics, I mean, obviously there would be a ton of people in line and a lot more deserving people than myself. But I mean, for one thing, that might be, especially if it was something that was soon, because there's still like you've got the Savages now. They've won a couple national championships. They're right out of Edmonton. I've played with some of the guys, played against a lot of the guys. And if they had an opportunity to have some of those players go to the Olympics, I would love to go watch. That's exactly something where hey, the wife and I would say, there's my passion. There's the game that I love. Let's go see it played under the lights of, all the fanfare and everything else of what the Olympics can bring. So yeah, that would be fantastic. I had heard that. I mean, I know George Gortzos, who had done phenomenal. I mean, one of the greatest coaches I've ever worked or ever played for. He ran that organization, trying to get it to the level of an Olympic sport. Yeah. And he's just retired recently, but boy, did he do a good job. And if it does get there, he's laid a big foundation for that sport to get to the Olympics.
Yeah, I can tell you right now from personal, being on the league there for a number of years, and of course being involved with Steve. Steve was probably the greatest organizer in sports, in ball hockey, for the longest time. And he was in the 80s, he was a Canadian Ball Hockey Association president, but he was one of the first to make contact with the European countries. I recall when he would come into a meeting, he goes, "Hey, guess what country I spoke to yesterday on the phone?" Nice. and he was one of the early they got involved with trying to do worlds before that, but he was the ones that really wanted to get together to standardize the rules so that they can play other countries without this variance of style or rules that would cause confusion. It's bad enough that you have language barriers. So he was one of the proponents of it. But I recall very clearly, we went to a number of meetings. We'd go to the national meetings. And although I wasn't allowed in those national meetings, I was within earshot. And people had whispered it, going, the only next level we have after that is the Olympics. And what would we have to do to make it an Olympic sport? And how long would it take? Little did I know that it's nearly, 30 some odd years, 40 years later, that we're still looking at trying to get the sport into the Olympics. But I think that would be hopefully the ultimate of the sport, and to be involved in that in any way. I feel so happy that if there were some kids out there right now that would end up being some of the first players, it'd be great. But I would not hesitate. I would travel to wherever it's at to go to be there. I would do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah, well, if let's say Slovakia or Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic, I guess, if they were to host, ball hockey is such a huge sport in those countries that it might be what's it called, like the trial sport, they call them the presentation sports, or they call them that's what they call them. They're not an official competition until they go through their even baseball was a presentation sport for a period of time. Well, because it's not played in many countries, right? But it has
ball
to
hockey
be in
now,
all five. I thought it had to be in all five mainline continents to be considered an Olympic sport, I think.
Right, and they've reached, on ball hockey, you've reached almost every level. South America being one of the only ones that is kind of on the fringe, but every other continent has got representation. So that's great. So I'll end the interview there now. I thank you for your time.